I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I couldn't really articulate my thoughts very well, and so I was waiting, and then I got COVID, so I was out of commission for a little while, and so I figured it's a little late, but I wanted to give my thoughts on it anyway. So, full disclosure, I have no college degrees, and I'm definitely not a political science major or anything like that, but I also did not vote for Biden this last election. I couldn't bring myself to do that because I don't like his stance on his hawkish war policies. I don't like that he voted for the Patriot Act. I don't like his stance on segregation in the past. And he runs like a 1980s model Republican. A lot of his policies don't really match up with my positions, and not to mention, I consider myself a progressive, and so seeing how the Democrats keep moving further right, I figured he hadn't earned my vote, and if I keep voting for the lesser of two evils, then nothing's ever going to change. But I also couldn't bring myself to vote for Trump either. I believe that his tax returns show a lot of corruption. I also cite his Turnberry Resort story, where he funnels troops to that resort so he can get flush with taxpayer money, causing the planes to have to fuel at civilian stations, which also cost taxpayer money, and that all goes to him and his sons for his business. I don't like the fact that he was selling arms to Saudi Arabia when they're currently leading a genocide in Yemen, and I don't like his deregulation of businesses as well as his stake on the environment. So I didn't vote for either of those during this last election. I consider myself an independent, and what I saw after the election was really troubling to me for a lot of reasons, and most of that is this anti-fact, anti-science movement that I've been seeing a lot of. And it's not just on one side, it's on both. So we have a lot of people on the right who cite people on the left, like social justice warriors, who talk about 52 different genders and that kind of thing, which is fine, but then when you try to bring up the science on how male and female brains are different biologically, a lot of people shut that down. And that identity politics has really hurt the progressive left because of people like that. And then you have people on the right who don't want to get into vaccines, a lot of conspiracy theories that have absolutely no merit and have been debunked a million times. And then you also have QAnon, who believes that President Trump will save the children from the pedophiles, when the facts show that there have actually been less arrests federally for child sex trafficking under Trump than there were under previous presidents. And so those aren't the only issues, but those are some that I cite to explain to people listening, if anybody is, that there are certain things that are up for debate, and there are certain things that you can have evidence pointing either way, and debate is healthy and debate is good, and entering those debates with an open mind, hoping to learn something, is how we grow as people. But then there are some things that are just factually inaccurate. And if you have a narrative and you're ignoring those facts to suit your narrative and your worldview, you're not being truthful. You're acting on this faith that is completely misplaced, and it allows you to act without thinking. It allows you to put this trust in people and in teams like the Republican Party or the Democratic Party when they don't have your best interest in heart. And it makes you easy to manipulate. And on top of that, it makes it easier to vilify somebody who doesn't agree with you on a topic. And people that don't agree with you on topics aren't your enemy. They're not in opposition. They're an opportunity for you to learn more, not only about your own stance, but about how they feel about something, and that you might be wrong. You should always enter conversations, if somebody has an opposing view, with the idea that you might not be correct, that they might know more than you do. And if they change your mind, that's fine. It's okay to admit that you were wrong or that your evidence wasn't 100% accurate. But it also helps that if you're talking to somebody who has that same mindset as you can't shut out truth and facts because you don't agree with it. Some things are just how it is. Now, some people who believe the election is stolen, I originally thought they're living in a bubble. They have a narrative, and they don't want to admit that their side lost. How could my side lose? Everybody I know and everybody I talk to and everybody I see, or at least most of them, have the same view as me. There's no way. There's no way my side could lose. And I thought, these people really need to wake up. But then I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he brings up things that I've even brought up in the past before this election. So, for instance, there was a Republican governor who was still on a voting commission, and the person who was running against him was a Democrat, and she had signed up 27,000 people to vote. And he purged almost every one of those voters because he was illegally on the voting commission, even though they told him it was illegal and he needed to step down, and he just refused to do it. And he won that election by a very, very small margin. And then we have the Iowa caucus, where Pete Buttigieg had donated thousands of dollars to the company responsible for creating the app that would tally the votes. And then people from his administration or his campaign left his campaign and went to work for that company. And lo and behold, he won Iowa. And he said he won before all the votes had been counted. And so, voter suppression by powerful people is a very common tool, especially if you look at gerrymandering, that can influence elections massively. Voter fraud by individuals has been committed at a very, very low rate. And the commission that President Trump put into place after the 2016 confirmed that, even though they were Trump loyalists and they were right-wingers. And so, if you want to look at the powerful people that may have swayed this election, it's pretty easy to tell that this election most likely was not fraudulent, because the people that are donating to Biden and the people that are donating to Trump are one and the same. Biden runs like a 1980s moderate Republican which believes in deregulation of Wall Street. He has Wall Street people in his cabinet. Just like Trump had Wall Street people in his cabinet, like the Goldman Sachs members who wrote his tax plan and then championed that. So if powerful people are going to be making money off this election, and the two people running are almost the exact same when it comes to big business, the odds of this election being fraudulent are very low. On top of that, a lot of these claims have been thrown out in court. So although I understand where they're coming from, and I understand that there is this inherent lack of belief in the system, which is completely justified, all the facts point to this election being perfectly acceptable. There might be rates of voter fraud that are a little higher, especially after the polarization and division of America. It makes sense that more people would want their side to win and go to lengths of doing stuff illegal to make that happen. And that's why voting commissions exist, and that is why recounts exist, and that is why each state handles it away from the federal government to avoid tampering. But whenever I bring these up to a lot of people, they completely disregard those. They call them fake news. Whenever I bring these stories of corruption up, same thing. False news. It's your narrative. You're just saying it because of your point of view. When the only time that I bring facts to the table is when I undoubtedly believe in those facts and I know exactly what I'm talking about. This division of red and blue, of Republican and Democrat, of liberals and communists and racists and authoritarians, it's all smokescreen. For years, Democrats and Republicans have been voting the exact same way on almost every policy position that benefits large corporate America and doesn't help you. The majority of Americans want to raise the minimum wage. The majority of Americans want to end the war on drugs. The majority of Americans want out of Iraq. The majority of Americans even want Medicare for all. And most of this could be done relatively quickly, easily, and in most cases it would save the taxpayers money. But they don't do it. They don't end the wars. They don't legalize, tax, and regulate drugs. They're not even decriminalizing marijuana on a federal level, even though a lot of states have made it to where you can smoke in those states. And the reason that they're doing that is because it benefits people that give them money, and you and I don't give them money. But we have to come together and stop vilifying people that disagree with us. Otherwise, it's going to be easier for them to take and take and take every year until the next step is complete and utter death of democracy in the U.S. But I'm just a guy in a garage. But that's my opinion.